The breaking point, the rain hammered against the floor-to-ceiling windows of the penthouse office as Damien Cross loosened his silk tie. Another 18-hour day at Cross Industries was finally ending, though the empire he had built never truly slept. At 34, he commanded respect in every boardroom across the city. His name whispered with reverence and fear in equal measure. Yet, as he stared at his reflection in the darkened glass, all he saw was a man who had forgotten how to live. The elevator chimed softly as it reached the 42nd floor. Damien didn't need to turn around to know who had arrived. Victoria. Sterling Cross moved with unmistakable grace, her heels clicking against the marble floor in a rhythm he had memorized long ago. 3 years of marriage, and that sound still made his pulse quicken, though he would never admit it. Working late. Again, Victoria said, her voice carrying a note of resignation that cut deeper than any accusation. She set a steaming cup of coffee on his desk, the gesture both caring and distant. I brought your dinner too. Lena made your favorite. Damien finally turned, and the sight of his wife never failed to steal his breath. Victoria was stunning, in a way that transcended mere beauty. Her dark hair cascaded over her shoulders like silk, framing a face that belonged in Renaissance paintings. Tonight, she wore a simple black dress that hugged her curves perfectly, emphasizing the elegance that had first caught his attention at a charity gala 3 years ago. Thank you, he managed, though the words felt inadequate. You didn't have to come all the way down here? Victoria's laugh held no humor. When was the last time we had dinner together, Damien? When was the last time we had a real conversation that wasn't about your schedule or my charity work? The question hung in the air between them like an accusation. Damien searched his memory, coming up empty. The realization hit him like a physical blow. Somewhere in the relentless pursuit of success, he had lost sight of what truly mattered. The Patterson deal is almost closed, he said finally, falling back on the safe territory of business. Once that's done, we can plan that trip too. Tuscany, you mentioned. The Patterson deal. Victoria repeated the words slowly, as if tasting something bitter. Just like the Morrison acquisition was going to free up your time, and the Singapore expansion before that. There's always another deal, Damien. Another mountain to climb. She moved to the window, her silhouette outlined against the city lights. Below, from this height, the world looked manageable, controllable. Damien had always found comfort in that perspective. But tonight, it felt lonely. This is important, Victoria. Everything I'm building, it's for us. For our future. What future? The question came out sharper than Victoria intended, and she immediately softened her tone. I'm sorry. I didn't come here to fight. Then why did you come? Victoria turned to face him, and Damien was startled to see tears glistening in her dark eyes. In 3 years of marriage, he had seen her cry exactly twice. Once at their wedding, overwhelmed by joy, and once at her father's funeral. The sight of those unshed tears sent a chill down his spine. I came to tell you that I'm leaving, she said quietly. I've filed for divorce. The shattered foundation, the words hit Damien like a physical blow. Coffee cup slipped from his suddenly nerveless fingers, shattering against the marble floor. Dark liquid spread across the pristine white stone like spilled blood. What? The word came out as barely a whisper. I can't do this anymore, Damien. I can't live like a ghost in my own marriage. Victoria's voice grew stronger as she spoke, as if voicing the words was giving her courage. For 3 years, I've been waiting for you to remember that you have a wife, that you have a life outside this office. I've planned romantic dinners that you've missed. I've bought tickets to shows you've never attended. I've worn lingerie to bed that you've never noticed because you're either here or asleep from exhaustion. Each word was like a knife twisting in Damien's chest. He wanted to argue, to defend himself, but the truth of her accusations was undeniable. Victoria, please, we can work this out. I know I've been distant, but distant. Victoria's laugh was sharp and painful. Damien, we live in the same house, but we might as well be strangers. When was the last time you kissed me? Really kissed? Me? Not just a peck on the cheek as you rushed out the door? The question hung in the air, and Damien realized with horror that he couldn't remember. The woman he had married, the woman he had promised to love and cherish, had become little more than a beautiful fixture in his life. Do you remember our wedding night? Victoria asked, her voice dropping to almost a whisper. You promised me that nothing would ever come between us, that your love for me would always be your priority. Damien closed his eyes, the memory washing over him. Victoria in her wedding dress, radiant with happiness, the way she had looked at him like he was her entire world, promises they had made. Under the stars on the terrace of the Belmont Hotel, I remember, he said hoarsely. I held on to that promise for 3 years, Victoria continued. I told myself that once the business stabilized, once you felt secure, you would come back. To me, but I realize now that there will always be another deal, another challenge, another reason to put us second. She walked to his desk and placed a manila envelope beside his computer. The papers are all in order. Not asking for anything. From the business, I just want my freedom. Victoria, wait. Damien reached for her, but she stepped back, shaking her head. I've waited long enough, Damien. Eating dinner alone, attending events alone while you worked. I'm 28 years old, and I feel like I'm wasting away. The pain in her voice was raw and real, and Damien felt something crack inside his chest. This beautiful, vibrant woman had withered in the shadow of his ambition, and he hadn't even noticed. I never meant for this to happen, he said desperately. You have to believe me. I love you, do you? Victoria asked, and the simple question destroyed him. When was the last time you told me that? When was the last time you showed me? Damien opened his mouth to answer, but no words came. The silence stretched between them, heavy with 3 years of neglect and missed opportunities. I thought so, Victoria said softly. You love the idea of me, Damien. You love having a beautiful wife to display at corporate events, but you don't love me enough to make time for me. You don't love me enough to put me first. The awakening Victoria picked up her purse from the chair where she had set it. I'm staying at my sister's tonight, and tomorrow I'm moving back to my apartment. The apartment? Damien's heart sank. Victoria had kept her old apartment even after they married, claiming she needed a space for her art. He had thought it was charming then. Now he realized it had been her escape route. I never gave it up, Victoria admitted. Some part of me always knew this day would come. I just hoped I was wrong. She walked toward the elevator, her heels clicking against the marble with heartbreaking finality. At the threshold, she turned back one last time. For what it's worth, I really did love you, Damien. I loved you enough for both of us, but I can't love you enough to keep destroying myself. The elevator doors slid shut with a soft chime, and Damien was alone. The silence in the office was deafening, broken only by the rain against the windows and the harsh sound of his own breathing. He sank into his chair, staring at the manila envelope on his desk. 3 years of marriage reduced to legal documents and signatures. The empire he had built suddenly felt hollow, meaningless. What was the point of conquering the world if he had lost the only person who mattered? Dawn broke gray and cold over the city as Damien stood at the window of his office. Still wearing yesterday's clothes? He hadn't slept, hadn't eaten, hadn't moved from this spot since Victoria walked out of his life. The divorce papers lay scattered across his desk, each page a testament to his failures as a husband. His phone buzzed insistently. Another board meeting, another crisis that demanded his attention. For the first time in his career, Damien Cross ignored the call. The business that had consumed his life suddenly seemed trivial compared to the woman he was about to lose forever. Sir, his assistant Jennifer knocked softly on the door. The Morrison representatives are here for the 9 o'clock meeting. Cancel it, Damien said, without turning around. Sir, but this deal has been months in the making. Cancel everything, Damien said firmly. Clear my schedule for the week. I have more important matters to handle. Jennifer's shock was evident in her silence. In 5 years of working for him, she had never heard Damien Cross cancel a business meeting, let alone an entire week's worth. Damien grabbed his keys and headed for the elevator. If he was going to fight for his marriage, he needed to understand exactly what he was fighting against. And there was only one place to start. Victoria's art studio was in the Arts District. Converted warehouse space, filled with natural light and creative energy. Damien had visited exactly once, on the day she signed the lease 3 years ago. The memory made him sick with shame. How had he never found time to see the place where his wife poured her heart into her work? The space was more beautiful than he remembered. Victoria's paintings covered the walls, each one a window into her soul. Damien moved through the studio like a man in a dream, seeing his wife's talent with fresh eyes. Her work was extraordinary, filled with passion and emotion that took his breath away. But it was the chronology of the paintings that destroyed him. The earliest works were vibrant and joyful, filled with warm colors and light. As he moved through the years, the paintings grew darker, more melancholy. The most recent ones were haunting in their sadness, portraits of loneliness that made his chest ache. In the corner, he found a canvas turned toward the wall. With trembling hands, he turned it around and nearly fell to his knees. It was a painting of him, but not as he saw himself. This was the man Victoria saw, cold and distant, surrounded by shadows despite the light trying to reach him. At the bottom, in her delicate script, were the words, "The man I married." The choice Damien spent the next 3 days in Victoria's studio, studying her paintings like sacred texts. Each brushstroke revealed another layer of the woman he had married but never truly known. He found sketches of plans for romantic dinners, ticket stubs from concerts she had attended alone, and a journal filled with her thoughts about their crumbling marriage. One entry, dated just 2 months ago, brought tears to his eyes. "I used to wait up for him every night, hoping tonight would be different. Now I go to bed alone and dream of a husband who remembers my name." On the 4th day, he made a decision. That would have shocked his business partners. Called his lawyer and instructed him to dissolve Cross Industries. Not sell it, not merge it, but systematically dismantle the empire he had spent 15 years building. The company would be broken up, its assets distributed to employees through profit-sharing programs he had never bothered to implement. "Sir, you can't be serious," his lawyer protested.
Ow.
"The company is worth hundreds of millions." "Money I earned while losing my wife," Damien replied. "What good is an empire if you rule it alone?" The process took 2 weeks. 2 weeks of watching his life's work disappear while he prepared for the most important presentation of his life. Not to a boardroom full of executives, but to one woman who had every right to walk away. He found Victoria at her sister's house on a rainy Thursday evening, much like the night she had left him. She answered the door in paint-stained jeans and an oversized sweater, her hair pulled back in a messy bun. She had never looked more beautiful. "Damien?" She seemed genuinely surprised to see him. "What are you doing here? I need to show you something," he said, holding up a thick folder. "Please, just give me 30 minutes. Victoria's sister, Alina, appeared behind her. "Victoria, you don't have to. It's okay," Victoria said quietly. 30 minutes. They sat in Elena's living room, the divorce papers spread between them like a battlefield. Damien opened his folder and pulled out the first document.
Ow.
"Is the dissolution agreement for Cross Industries?" he said, watching her eyes widen. "As of yesterday, the company no longer exists. The assets have been distributed to employees, and the headquarters building is being converted into affordable housing." "You dissolved your company?" Victoria's voice was barely a whisper. "Damien, that was your life's work." "No," he said firmly. "You were my life's work. I just forgot that for a while." He pulled out the second document. "This is the deed, too. A small cottage in Tuscany. The one you showed me in that magazine 3 years ago? I bought it last week." Victoria's hands shook as she took the deed. "You remembered?" "I remembered everything," Damien said, his voice breaking. "Every dinner I missed, every conversation I cut short, every night I chose work over you. I remembered, and I hate myself for it." He reached into the folder one more time and pulled out a small canvas. It was a painting, crude and amateur, but painted with love. It showed 2 figures dancing under the stars, and despite his lack of skill, Victoria recognized them immediately. "Spent the last week learning to paint," he said. "I wanted to understand what I had been missing all these years. I wanted to see the world through your eyes." Tears streamed down Victoria's face as she held the painting. "Damien, I can't just forget 3 years of loneliness because you dissolved your company. I'm not asking you to forget, he said, dropping to his knees in front of her. I'm asking you to let me spend the rest of my life making up for those 3 years. I'm asking you to let me love you the way you deserve to be loved from the beginning. Victoria closed her eyes, and Damien could see the war raging inside her. Love battling with hurt, hope fighting against the fear of being disappointed again. What if you get bored? She whispered. Need the rush of business? The thrill of the deal? And I'll paint. Damien said simply. I'll paint until my hands shake. I'll read until my eyes burn. I'll learn to cook your favorite meals and grow roses in our garden. I'll find 100 ways to fill my time that don't involve forgetting you exist. Victoria opened her eyes and looked at him. Really looked at him for the first time in months. What she saw there was a man she had almost forgotten existed. The man who had promised her the world under the stars on their wedding night. The returned Victoria reached across the coffee table and picked up the divorce papers. For a moment, Damien's heart stopped. Then, slowly, deliberately, she tore them in half. I can't promise it will be easy, she said, her voice steady despite the tears. I can't promise I'll trust you immediately. 3 years of hurt doesn't disappear overnight. I know, Damien said, hardly daring to breathe. I'll earn it back. Every day I'll earn it back. Victoria stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the rain that had been falling since she left their home. I kept the apartment because I was afraid, she admitted. I was afraid that if I gave myself completely to our marriage, I'd lose myself entirely. Maybe I was part of the problem too. You were never the problem, Damien said, standing behind her. You were the solution I was too blind to see. She turned in his arms, and for the first time in months, really looked at him. The sharp edge of ambition was gone from his eyes, replaced by something softer but stronger. Love, real love, not the distant affection of a busy husband. I have conditions, she said. Anything. No business ventures for at least a year. I need to know that you can be happy just being with me. Done. Sunday dinners. Every Sunday, we cook together and eat without phones, without distractions. I'd like that, and I want to travel, really travel. Not those business trips where I sit in hotel rooms while you work. I've already booked our flight to Tuscany, Damien said, pulling out a confirmation email. We leave next week. 2 months in the cottage, just us. Victoria smiled, and it was like watching the sun rise after the longest night. 2 months? What about your meetings, your deals? I told you, I dissolved the company. My only job now is learning how to be the husband you deserve. 6 months later, they sat on the terrace of their Tuscan cottage, watching the sunset paint the hills in shades of gold and amber. Victoria's easel was set up nearby, a half-finished painting of the landscape glowing in the evening light. Damien sat beside her, not checking his phone or thinking about business, just watching his wife work. Do you ever miss it? Victoria asked, not looking up from her canvas. The empire, the power, the rush of closing deals, Damien considered. The question seriously. Sometimes I miss the feeling of building something, he said. But then I remember that I'm building something now, something more important than any company. What's that? He said simply. A life together, a real marriage. Victoria set down her brush and leaned into him. I love you, she said, the words carrying none of the desperate edge they had held during their crisis. These were words of joy, of certainty, of a future they would build together. I love you too, Damien replied, and meant it in a way he had forgotten how to mean. Thank you for giving me another chance. Thank you for becoming the man I knew you could be. As the stars appeared in the darkening sky, they sat together in comfortable silence, two people who had almost lost everything and found something better in its place. The rain had stopped, and the world smelled fresh and new, full of possibilities. In the distance, church bells chimed the hour, and Damien realized that for the first time in years, he wasn't counting the minutes until the next obligation. He was simply present in this moment, with this woman, in this life they had chosen to rebuild together. Victoria picked up her brush again, adding delicate touches to the painting that would capture this perfect evening forever. And Damien watched, content to be exactly where he was, with exactly whom he belonged. Like this video if the story touched your heart, subscribe for more emotional tales, and share with someone who believes in the power of true love. Let us know in the comments. We love connecting with our global community of romance lovers.